recording the meeting, or do you want me to do that?
I've got that.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, the recording is started.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so again, welcome everyone. My name is Bethany Lazanik, and I'm a Distance Learning Associate and TA for the Distance Learning Project. And today I'm going to be talking to you about giving students feedback from a distance. So for the webinar today, we are going to review the 4 key qualities of giving effective feedback, discuss using text, audio, and video feedback, and the best time to use each one of those solutions, describe common pitfalls and solutions of using audio and video feedback. We're going to identify some ways to save time when giving students feedback. And then at the end, I'm going to demonstrate some of the free tools that I'm going to mention throughout this presentation so you can see how they work. And then at the end, I'm also going to save some time for questions, but feel free to ask questions as we go. You can unmute your microphone to do that, or you can even ask questions in the chat as I go if you're more comfortable doing that. So just to start out here, I want to review the 4 key qualities of effective feedback. And so first, feedback should be frequent. Students rely on your feedback to guide their learning, and we know if they're not receiving it consistently and often throughout the course, they may have difficulty identifying where to focus their efforts. It's recommended that students get at least 1 opportunity a week to receive feedback. It doesn't have to be a big weekly assignment. It can be something as small as giving an in-class quiz or responding to a student's discussion post. Feedback should also be specific. Good feedback not only details the areas for improvement, but offers actionable advice. We know that telling a student this needs work is not enough. Students need guidance on how to fix the problems. Feedback also needs to be balanced. So it's important to point out a student's strengths and weaknesses. Letting students know what they did well is empowering and reinforcing for them, and affirming their strengths to balance their flaws and their work is important. Some call this approach the feedback sandwich, which is simply corrective feedback sandwiched between positive feedback. Something that I always make sure to do, especially with my new students, is at least for the first time or two, is try to avoid giving them negative feedback and give them all positive reinforcement to help build up their confidence and motivation. And finally, feedback needs to be timely. The faster you give students feedback, the more useful it will be to them. So now we're going to talk about when it might be best to use text feedback versus video or audio. So if your assignment requirements are clearly laid out with straightforward and well-defined expectations, using an online rubric that allows brief text-based comments is likely the most effective way to give students feedback. Here are a few digital options for providing text-based feedback. So first, there are annotation tools. So some course management systems have built-in annotation tools that you can use to leave comments and feedback directly on a student's work. You can use them without having to download each and every file, which saves a ton of time. There are several free resources out there for making annotations on student assignments, including Zoom, Hypothesis, Google Docs, and a Google Doc add-on called Kaizena. And we'll talk about each one of those options a little bit later in this presentation. Another digital option is a built-in rubric. You may have designed your own rubrics for assignments, but if your LMS or other learning platform has a built-in rubric tool, I highly recommend you give it a try. Built-in rubrics often offer time-saving features such as reusable comments and a total points column that will automatically add up the points you've assigned for each criterion of the rubric, which is another major time saver. And so just to show you an example of a built-in rubric on our LMS, we use Canvas, and here is it's a fake assignment from me that I put in to our GED essay course that we built. So I pasted an example essay in here to show you how easy it is to go and fill out one of these built-in rubrics. And so you just click here and you can see the criteria and the ratings. And so, if I had read this essay, I could quickly, maybe mark this a 2 for trait 1. Maybe trait 2 is a 1. And maybe trait 3 is a 0. And so I can save that. You can see it automatically tallied the points to be 3. And then I can put in any additional comments that I would want to put in for the student. And you can also, in this particular LMS, you can also attach files and things like that and audio recordings. But the built-in rubric made it really easy to score this assignment. I happen to know that a student has to get a 3 out of 6 on this assignment to have it marked complete. So, I could mark this assignment complete, okay? Automated feedback is also known as computer-assisted assessment. This tool basically lets you reuse your written feedback. Some LMSs or other grading platforms allow you to save a comment you wrote for one student and use it again for others who make the same mistake or achieve the same success. In addition, your LMS may allow you to pre-program question-specific or even answer-specific feedback for your auto-graded quizzes. For example, for a correct answer, the automatic feedback might say something as simple as good job. And for an incorrect answer, it might say something like, please rewatch part of this week's class discussion. Electronic surveys or live polling have both gained popularity as a quick way to tell how well your class as a whole is understanding the material. A thumbs up rating, a star system, or a simple yes or no question can give you valuable feedback on class topics and help you tailor your content and emphasis. You can also use surveys and polls to get a quick read on how your students think the course is going and then make adjustments. You can use programs like Google Forms or SurveyMonkey, which are both free, to send surveys, and most webinar platforms also have polling features. Additionally, there's a program called Poll Everywhere that is free and has many more polling capabilities than most webinar platforms. For example, you can ask students open-ended questions, clickable images, there's emotion scales, and much more. Destiny did a webinar last month on Poll Everywhere. If it's of interest to you and you missed that webinar, please feel free to watch the recording. Another way to give feedback is by using audio and or video feedback. So, and many times it's more appropriate to use audio or video feedback. So for example, a grading rubric may identify common trouble spots in an assignment, but it won't necessarily highlight the specific errors holding a student back. That's where video feedback tool can come in handy. A screencast video of a student's assignment, coupled with you walking the student through the project using audio feedback, allows you to provide detailed one-on-one support and build a closer connection with every student. Audio and video notes are typically more detailed too, as you explain verbally what you're seeing in the student's work. With audio or video feedback, you can record your observations, saving time since many of us speak faster than we can type. Another instance where you might want to use audio and or video feedback is when you want to convey nuance. For example, if you're teaching a communications course that emphasizes tone, body language, or social skills, it's easier to show rather than tell. With video feedback, you can show students exactly what you mean. And the same is true for ESL classes. Instructors can use audio files to ensure that tones and dialects are being used and learned properly. Next, it's difficult to evaluate verbal presentation skills using written feedback alone. With digital tools, you can record students' presentations or have students record themselves and then use screencasting software to insert your feedback. Besides pointing out content errors, you can use the software to show students when they are repeatedly using to fill gaps, putting their hands in their pocket, or doing other things that might be a distraction. Another instance you might want to use video feedback is when you want to demonstrate a process. In some content areas, like math, getting the right answer means completing steps in a certain order. Communicating to your learners exactly where an error occurred in a process can sometimes be challenging. By using screencasting software, you can point out the exact location of a student's error and show how it affected the outcome. Next, if you assign a project in which the choice of content is subjective or open-ended, a one-size-fits-all grading process might not work. Here again, audio and video feedback can come to the rescue, letting you quickly personalize your students' feedback. Finally, audio or video feedback might be the most appropriate when you want to avoid miscommunication. We've all received feedback, an email or text that we might have perceived as being negative or even rude, and chances are that wasn't the sender's intention. So if you're afraid that students can misinterpret your written communication, audio or video feedback just might help to resolve those problems. So when using audio and video feedback, it's important to keep a couple things in mind. So one is to avoid making long videos. Most students won't sit through an overly long recording. A long recording just might deter them from watching or listening at all, especially if it takes a long time to download. A good general guideline is to keep your feedback recordings to under 5 minutes. Always try to be concise and on topic in your feedback. Also keep in mind that video and audio feedback doesn't have to be perfect. A lot of time can be wasted trying to edit out every pause, or mistake. You can't go back and delete those verbal tics in real time, so don't worry about doing so digitally either. In fact, hearing your actual voice and tone is one element of audio and video feedback that can be appealing to students. When you are new to this form of feedback, you can practice what you're going to say before you hit the record button to save yourself some time. Also, don't provide too much information at once, which kind of goes along with that first bullet point, right? In creating videos, it can be really easy to overlook cognitive overload and provide too much information too fast. Make sure you only talk about whatever it is you're pointing to on the video. If you are talking about a paper's organization, for example, but suddenly start to highlight another element, you risk confusing the student. To minimize that problem, use the cursor or a highlighting tool to point out exactly what you're talking about so your voice and the images align for learners. This is called signaling, and it helps reduce cognitive overload for your students. So next we're going to talk about some time-saving things that you can do. We all know that giving feedback can take a lot of our time. And part of my job as a teacher for the distance learning project is obviously to give students feedback, which I do at least once per week for every student. And when done well, like I said, it can be very time consuming, and I recognize that. And so, one idea to save some time, again, is this idea of utilizing rubrics. So not only do rubrics save time, but they give students a clear understanding of the evaluation criteria before they even begin an assignment. Your grading is more transparent to students and less prone to bias when you use a rubric. So some of the tools out there include iRubric and Rubistar, which you've probably heard of. In case you haven't, they are free programs that make creating rubrics very easy. Both also have databases of existing rubrics that can be used as is or customized. Also, as I mentioned, digital rubrics built directly into your LMS allow you to click the appropriate criterion and automatically tally points, which can save a ton of time. Also, having students complete peer reviews can be a major time saver in large classes. So peer review is especially useful when students are working on scaffolded assignments with multiple opportunities for feedback. So peers can be asked to evaluate the earliest drafts so that students can make improvements before submitting their final version to their teachers for grading. Google Docs and most LMSs have the capability to allow peer reviewing. The logistics of it can be challenging. My recommendation is to do a trial run with the platform you use for peer reviewing before asking students to go through the process. It will make it much easier for you to help students through those logistical challenges. And finally, you can simply save a document where you keep feedback that you commonly find yourself typing. You can often copy and paste from that document to save yourself some time. I used to teach the Distance Learning Project's DL 101 class, which has to be completed by all students entering the program as part of their orientation. And for the DL 101 class, students actually have to complete 12 written assignments. And I often found myself typing the same comments over and over again. So to save time, I created a document that I added to over time when I found myself typing something I had before. And eventually it grew into something that saved me literally days of time. I could copy and paste from the document, and rarely did I need to make any changes to that feedback. So, as I promised, I was going to demonstrate and talk some more about some of these free tools that I've mentioned for providing students free feedback. So first, you can use Zoom to record short videos for students. Within Zoom, it's possible to share documents, annotate, and you can even record a video with yourself in it using your webcam to even further personalize your feedback. After you're done recording in Zoom, it will create a file that can then be shared with students. Note that sometimes those files can be so large that you might need to upload them to a platform like Google Docs to share the video with students. Second, Vocaroo is a PC-friendly voice recorder. It immediately generates a link to the recording that can be sent to students. It's super user-friendly, and you just have to sign up for a free account. I'm just going to show you quickly what that looks like. And so obviously I'd already went on here, signed up for a free account. It was very easy to do. And then once you're signed into the account, this is what it looks like, okay? Simply hit this button when you're ready to record. So, hi, my name is Bethany. and stop your recording, and then it's going to give you the option to save and share it. And of course, it's not working for me right now, but it's probably just a little bit too short, maybe. But yes, typically all you have to do is click the save and share button. It will generate a link that can then be shared with students. So, you can't do video with Vocaroo, but it is something that will record your voice. Okay. Screencast-O-Matic is a free screen capture tool that allows you to record up to 15 minutes of video. This tool records a designated part of your screen, your audio, and it can also record your webcam input. It allows you to record a video up to 15 minutes, and there is a free version of Screencast-O-Matic that you can use to do all of the functions I just mentioned. The thing that you can't do with a free account is edit the videos. So that's something that you would have to upgrade to be able to do your editing directly on Screencast-O-Matic if you didn't have another editing tool. But most PCs at least have some editing tool built into them. Okay, so what that looks like, once you have your free account set up, when you click record, this will come up. You can set this, to which part of the screen you want to record. So if you don't want, your open tabs to be recorded, you can adjust that. Tell it what you want to record. Tell it if you want to record just your screen, just your webcam, or both. And then, you just record your screen and say what you want to say. And again, it'll give you a file that you can save. It'll generate a link that can be shared with students. So just another free tool that can be used to record your video and audio feedback. Okay, next is Hypothesis. So Hypothesis is an annotation tool. It can be integrated into your LMS, and it also works even on standalone PDF or web pages. So again, I'm going to show you what that looks like. We actually have it integrated into one of our Canvas courses. And you can see this is what it looks like when you have Hypothesis loaded onto an assignment. This was a PDF that we integrated Hypothesis into. And you can see if this highlighted area here, I know it's kind of light, but 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, and 24 are highlighted. And so if I click here, you can see that Layla Wilt, a student, asked a question. Are these factors or multiples? And so I love this feature because it's just a little bit more effective and efficient than having a student say, email us directly from the LMS. So yes, a student can send an email right from Canvas and say, hey, I'm having a problem, but it leaves it up to them to describe exactly where they're having a problem. Here, the student can actually highlight the part that's giving them problems and then ask you a question. And so you can see here, the teacher replied and answered her question, and they can keep the dialogue going. The teacher can do the same thing. If the teacher wants to highlight part of the text to emphasize something to the student, they can do that as well. Okay. And Christy said, my grad professor did a short video feedback and it was really personal and nice. Yeah, it's a great point, Christy. It seems like, every time I give a student feedback, even just using audio, but especially with video and audio, they really seem to appreciate it. It's more personalized and easier to follow for the student. Especially if you're demonstrating something that can be confusing. Okay, so another free tool for providing feedback. So if you're using Google Classroom, I just wanted to briefly mention this. You've probably realized you can provide feedback through the entire life cycle of the assignment, including returning an assignment after it's been turned in by the student. So the student has an opportunity to revise their work, make changes, and submit their work again. And so, we could probably do an entire webinar on Google Classroom. I don't want to get a lot into that, but they have a lot of great tools built right into that platform. There's a ton of add-ons, like Course Kit, for example, that you can use to help provide feedback using Google Classroom. So Google Docs is another one. It allows you to make comments and suggest changes. In a Google Doc, you can select text that you want to leave feedback on and then insert comments. And the selected text will become highlighted and a pop-up window will appear in the right margin. So let me show you what that looks like very quickly. And so I have an example here, and you'll notice these are the same paragraphs. I'm going to demonstrate two separate tools within this platform. And so if you're using the commenting and suggestion tools, for example, on Google Docs, so you can, I see here there's an error. And so I might add a comment here. And say Americans needs to be capitalized. And I can insert my comment there and it'll be highlighted for the student who can then, also reply to that comment if they have any questions, and also accept or reject the comment, okay? Something else you can do in Google Docs is you can turn on suggesting mode. And so if you were to do that, the changes that you make look a lot like the track changes that you would make using Microsoft Word. So Microsoft Word has that track changes feature. So, and that suggested edits is Google Docs equivalent to that. And so, maybe I would say, I want to make another change here. And you can see it's going to delete the word by, and then I can insert whatever text I want to put in here. Okay. Yeah, good point. Great. I see somebody made a comment saying that immediate feedback is really important. Something to mention about Google Docs, maybe your students aren't using Google Docs to respond to assignments, and that's okay. You can take their responses and put them into Google Docs, which is something I frequently do. So a lot of times, I mentioned our LMS that we're using is Canvas. Students will actually use the text entry option in Canvas. I can copy and paste their response into a Google Doc to provide them with feedback. And, a lot of times students will actually appreciate it so much. They don't even realize Google Docs or, Google Slides or any of that exists, and they're free tools that they can use. And so a lot of times when I copy and paste their assignments from our LMS and give them feedback in Google Docs, they'll actually start to use Google Docs. And in fact, I had a student just the other day tell me, I'm so happy I learned about this because I was just about to pay to renew, I think it was her Office 365 license for Microsoft Word. And then she didn't have to pay to use that tool because she learned about Google Docs. So I have found this is a really effective way to give feedback. Another tool that I want to mention to you is Kaizena. So Kaizena is a tool that allows teachers to give audio feedback on students' work. It also allows you to recommend lessons, rate skills, and even attach rubrics to students' work. Students can request feedback from teachers, and teachers can directly respond to the request. So teachers can open up documents through the Kaizena application, or they can open up Kaizena through Google Docs. So in other words, just to be clear, you don't have to use Google Docs to use Kaizena. You can use it directly through their application. The demonstration I'm going to show you is via an add-on through Google Docs, okay? No matter whichever way you use it, there is a free version, okay? And I had mentioned, and I'm going to show you, you can actually attach and recommend lessons for students. A limitation of the free account is that you can only have 5 pre-built lessons in there at one time. But I'm going to show you a quick way to set up those lessons. Okay. So using the same paragraph, and I need to turn off this suggested edits. Okay, so we had already, actually, sorry, one thing first, I need to open Kaizena. So obviously I had to download the add-on for Kaizena for this to work within my Google Docs. And then to turn it on, you just have to do what I just did within Google Docs and go to your add-ons and select it, okay? So as you can see, there are no open comments or anything like that to show right now, but we're gonna add some. So there's, like I said, there's so many things that you can do with this. For example, I'm gonna highlight this Americans, right? We know that this person did not have this word capitalized, and they should have. So I'm simply gonna record a voice message to let them know, okay? The word Americans should be capitalized. So now it's posted and it's highlighted. So when a student comes back into this document, they can click on the word Americans and they are going to see this recording. The word Americans should be capitalized. Okay. Something else I can do here, as I had mentioned, you can assign a lesson. And so I have a pre-built lesson in here for capitalization. I'm going to select it and post it. All it is, it's a Khan Academy video about capitalizing proper nouns. And so not only now will the student hear my audio feedback, they're also going to see that I'm recommending that they watch the capitalization video from Khan Academy as well when they click on that, okay? So just to do another demonstration here, the student had a really long run-on sentence, which you can see I corrected by putting a period after event and then capitalized for them. So I could, you know, again, I'll demonstrate a voice message. This sentence was a run-on sentence as written. You can see I made a suggestion for correcting it. I put a period in after life and then capitalized the word for. And then of course, when using the transition for example, you would also want to add a comma. Please also view the lesson on run-on sentences. So a little bit longer voice recording there. But then again, I can select the lesson for run-on sentences and have that student feedback there, okay? Something else you can do with this is you can rate skills. And so I have a lot of pre-built skills in here for mechanics and usage, writing a thesis statement. This is specifically for, writing an argumentative essay. So I have an analysis of the first argument and so on and so forth. And so maybe I wanted to rate mechanics and usage for this example, and I would maybe give it a 2. Okay. So that's something you can do with this. Another thing you can do is build rubrics. And so you can start with existing skills that you've already built to create a new rubric. You can start with a blank rubric, or you can use a rubric from a template that you've already pre-built. And so in this case, I've done that. I've got a rubric here for an argumentative essay. And if I wanted to, I could go through and just simply rate each of these skills on the rubric and send it to students. And you can also add a summary here at the bottom if you want to make additional comments. Okay. I'm going to show you how you would add lessons and rubrics. So I do have 5 of them in here, so I need to delete one so I can show you how it's done. So you just click new lesson and create. I'm sorry, for some reason it's being a little bit slow. Okay, I don't know why it's not working. I'm sorry, it's worked every other time I've tried it. It might be something with my internet connection. But basically what you do, say for subject-verb agreement, you could go to Khan Academy, search verb subject agreement, and simply collect the URL, and then post it as a comment. Okay. And you can also put in some other, words for your student. You could say something like, please view this video to learn more about verb subject agreement. Okay, and you can see it even made it an active link. So the students will see the comment and the link if you suggest that they work on a particular lesson. Okay. So that is Kaizena in a nutshell. Does anybody have any questions or any comments that they would like to make in regards to giving students effective feedback? Any questions about all those tools I just reviewed with you?
Hi, Bethany, it's Lisa.
Hey, Lisa.
Yeah, I just want to make a quick comment about Google Docs and Google Drive, and I'm sure everyone knows, but my college daughters, they're like, whoa, this is free. So I'm sure that's a benefit for your students too.
Yeah, my students always really appreciate it when they find out there's, a free resource out there that they can use. It's really can be a great replacement for Microsoft Word that they don't have to pay for.
Yeah, especially for Excel too,
Yeah.
that's another great tool. Thanks.
Yeah, it's a great point. Maribel, do you have access to the poll in regards to which
Yes.
tools that teachers might want to try?
It actually, because you're logged in as Prolo, it was switched to you, so you
Oh,
might have
okay.
access.
Okay. Yeah, actually, it's not there. I think it was set up in the other room, so it's not there. But um, you know, some of the tools that we talked about today were Zoom, Vocaroo, Screencast-O-Matic, Hypothesis, Google Classroom, Google Docs, and Kaizena. If if you would chat for me, something that you might try to use that you haven't used before, or if there's anything you want to know more about, please let us know that as well. And Chrissy made the point that Google offers so much, and there really isn't much difference when you use a laptop or a smartphone. Yeah, that's a great point. Stacy says Kaizena is looking interesting. Yeah, Stacy, I've been using it with you know, our ELA students when I'm giving feedback on essays, and they love it. And I've been finding that a lot more students are looking at it. And so, you know, what I would always give written feedback on, you know, on their essays, and I would highlight things that needed to be deleted and put in red text or some other color that would stand out the corrections that they needed to make. And a lot of times students would see it and I think really not process and learn from the feedback. And I've heard from a lot of students since I've started using Kaizena and the audio and video feedback that, you know, they're interacting with that feedback, and I believe learning much more from that than just simply annotating on their essays. And Jeremy said ReadWorks has an option for feedback on written responses and assignment. Yeah, Jeremy, that's a really good point. A lot of these applications and platforms have built-in options for doing a lot of these things that we talked about, you know, like saving comments and reusing them. So definitely check into that. The things that you're using may have features to make your life a little bit easier. And Emma said she wants to try Screencast-O-Matic. I think it'll really help my students. And Meg says, I'm interested in Kaizena too. I've never seen it before. It might be very helpful. Yeah, it is. It can be very helpful. And again, just a reminder, I know I demonstrated on Google Docs, but if you're not a fan, your organization just doesn't use it, then, you know, again, you can use Kaizena directly from the application. And feel free to unmute yourselves if anybody wants to say anything. And Helen said, what similar tools are available out there to give feedback on students' speaking skills? And, you know, Helen, I think it just kind of depends on, oh, great. Thanks, Meg. Meg gave an example of Flipgrid for speaking. That's a great example. And Helen, too, I think, you know, it just depends on the assignment. I think a lot of the tools that we reviewed today could be helpful depending on how you're getting those assignments from students. You know, sometimes maybe even just an audio file from Vocaroo or something like that could be very helpful. And Chrissy said, Hannah S. is doing a PACE webinar on VoiceThread, and that might be one to consider. Chrissy, can you tell us a little bit about that? I'm not sure about that tool.
About VoiceThread or about the PACE webinar?
Well, I'm sorry, VoiceThread.
So VoiceThread is very similar to Flipgrid, except that with VoiceThread, you have options of if you want to record a video, record just audio, type in text, and you can create like multiple slides and people can comment on the different slides. So one thing I will say about VoiceThread, if people choose to do video and it gets a little like long because it doesn't cut them off, it could take a while for that video to upload if they have slow internet or down, you know, to pull it up. But I've used it in my grad classes and people have, you know, used the different pieces. So it's whatever they're comfortable with. But if you do use the video piece for the speaking skills, you can at least see and hear them speaking. And then if you as the teacher want to go back and add to that and give a comment, you can, but it's private to your group of students. And you probably, if you wanted to, could create ones just one-on-one with students, but I've typically seen it used more like with a small group. And to answer Allison's question, it's going to be one of the Tuesday webinars, and I think it's in December, but I'd have to check. And Allison, I can find out for sure and send you an email. But if you're a PACE member, you should get an update on that.
Thank you so much, Chrissy. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? We still have a few minutes if you do, so. And if not, you know, I know we went over a lot of free tools that you may or may not have heard of before, and we did it in a short amount of time. So if there's anything you want to know more about, feel free to email me. I will type my email address in here just so everyone has it handy. So let me know if you have any more questions about these tools. Also, this presentation is going to be uploaded to the PA Adult Ed Resources website and can be accessed there if you need to review anything, okay? All right, everyone. Thank you so much for attending. And I hope that everyone has a great weekend and a really happy Thanksgiving as well.